Alright, let's start off with number 2 from your review. Cosine squared of x times cosecant of x minus cosecant of x. If you look at your instructions, they say in 1 through 3, simplify each of the following. So in this case, we need to simplify. Simplification was just like number 1 from your quiz that you took yesterday. So let's look at our problem. What do they have in common that we can factor out? A cosecant of x, correct. So that's what we're going to factor out. We're going to factor out a cosecant x. And when we factor out a cosecant x, what are we left with in the inside? Remember, I said factoring is a fancy word for division. So let's look at our first term. Our first term is cosine squared of x times cosecant of x. Well, let's divide that by what we're factoring, which is cosecant of x. When we divide cosine squared of x times cosecant of x divided by cosecant of x, what cancels out? My cosecants, exactly. So what am I left with in the first term? Cosine squared of x, good. Minus, all I did was just bring down the same sign. Now let's look at our second term right here. Remember, factoring is a fancy word for division. If I divide cosecant of x by what I'm factoring, which is cosecant of x, what is cosecant of x over or divided by cosecant of x? 1. Good. Okay, so we factored right there. So now we should be able to see that this middle term, or the inside of the parentheses, is some type of Pythagorean identity that we can rearrange to get it into this form. And what Pythagorean identity is that? Alright, good. It should be your sine squared of x plus cosine squared of x equals 1. And I'm going to type that here. Sine squared of x plus cosine squared of x equals 1. Alright, well, if I look here, my cosine needs to be with my 1, so that means they need to be together. Let me go ahead and highlight this so that you'll know the difference, that it's an identity and you won't get it confused with your actual problem. Okay, so in order for me to make life simpler, let me go ahead and move this positive 1 right here to the left-hand side. And when I move it to the left-hand side, it becomes what? A negative 1, correct. So now I have sine squared of x plus cosine squared of x minus 1 equals 0, right? Because everything has been moved to the left-hand side. Right there. Okay, so now I only want cosine squared of x minus 1 to be by itself. That means that I need to move what? Exactly, I need to move this sine squared of x to the other side. Well, what kind of sine squared of x is this? Is it a positive or a negative? It's a positive. So when I move it to the other side, it becomes a what? A negative. Good. So my new equation now reads cosine squared of x minus 1 equals negative sine squared of x. Okay. Alright, so let's take a look. Is this expression right here anywhere in our original problem up here? I believe so. Therefore, this middle expression in the parentheses can be substituted for what it's worth, and what is it equal to? Negative sine squared of x, correct. So if I rewrite my expression, I get cosecant of x times negative sine squared of x. Okay, let's rewrite cosecant of x, and that should be a reciprocal identity if you remember it. And how can I express cosecant of x? 1 over sine, correct. So I'm going to go ahead and express that as 1 over sine. So cosecant is 1 over sine of x times negative sine squared of x. Okay, at this point we basically have a fraction times a fraction, because this part can just be simply over 1. And if you want me to put it over 1, I can go ahead and do that. Okay, so we can do top times top. And what is 1 times negative sine squared of x? It's negative sine squared. Okay, so, and then at the bottom, what's sine of x times 1? Sine of x. Okay, so we're almost done. What we can do here is basically cancel out some sine of x's. In this case, how many sine of x's can we cancel out? 1, correct. So if we cancel out 1 sine of x at the bottom, it goes away. And if we cancel out 1 sine of x at the top, what's 2 minus 1? 1. So basically we're left with negative sine of x. And that is our answer. Okay, so let's go ahead and scroll back up. Make sure you have absorbed everything for this problem. One more time. I factored out a cosecant from my original problem, which was this, because the cosecant of x is what they have in common. Once I factored, I was left with cosine squared of x minus 1 inside the parentheses. From there, I referred back to my Pythagorean identity, sine squared of x plus cosine squared of x equals 1. I rearranged some things so that it could be in this form. So I shifted this positive 1 to the left-hand side, which became a negative 1. And then I shifted this positive sine squared x to the right-hand side, which became a negative sine squared of x. After moving all that around, I was able to get it in this form, which is exactly what's in the parentheses. So I substituted it with negative sine squared of x. From there, I rewrote cosecant of x as 1 over sine of x, and I kept my parentheses the same, and this time I simply just put it over 1. So I got two fractions, so top times top gave me negative sine squared of x, and bottom times bottom gave me sine of x. From there, I was able to eliminate one sine, and that canceled everything on the bottom, and then it canceled one of the signs away, leaving me with just negative sine of x, and that was my answer. Alright, so go ahead and finish writing this. I expect to see all of this in your box, if possible. Well, not if possible, I expect to see it. Okay, now let's go ahead and move on to number 3.